Another edition of the Wrap-Up Show with John and Jim on our brand new YouTube channel, and we're giving you in-season and off-season Padres content. If that's what you're looking for, if you want more Padres content, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button down below. Give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Follow us on social media as well, on Twitter specifically, at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. Let's get to today's topic, Jim, and you can pull it up right now. How far are the Padres from the Dodgers and the Giants? Now, we can look at the standings, obviously, and we know how far they are. I mean, 20-something games from both of them. We know that the separation is significant in 2021. When you look at it heading into 2022, and there are unknowns and variables, we get that. How far off do you think the Padres are heading into next season?
Pretty far off. The standings don't lie. You are what you are. And to make up potentially 30 games on a team in an offseason, that's going to be tough. Now, I will say, I think that this season for the Giants is an outlier. I don't think they're a team that can consistently win 100 games. Do I think they're a team that could contend for a playoff spot and a National League West championship for the next 5 years? I do, because I think they have the right pieces in place in that front office and on that coaching staff to help them contend regardless of who they have on their team. And oh, by the way, they are shedding a lot of money this offseason. So they're going to have a lot of money to play with in the offseason to bring back some pieces, potentially re-sign Chris Bryant, maybe go after top name free agents. So I think that this year for them, like, I don't see 106, 107 wins like next year for the Giants. Dodgers, on the other hand, they're consistently 100-win team. Like, they, no matter what, for the next, I feel like forever, will be a team that's going to win 90 to 105 games just because they're the Dodgers. So that's what you're competing with right now. And this year, with all the moves they made in the offseason, the Padres, that is, you're a 80-win team at best. Now, do I think if they're healthy for an entire year and you have a couple guys overperform, you make some tweaks in the offseason, like if everything was perfect for this team next year, health, couple moves, couple guys overperforming, Tatis continuing to be in the MVP conversation, Machado giving you 30 and 100 every year, Cronenworth going to give you 20 and 75 plus RBIs, then yeah, I think they can compete for a playoff spot, but that's if literally all of those things go right for you. And this team has been banking on ifs and hopes way too much lately, and it's backfired on them way too much.
Yeah, I think a big difference, to your point, between these three franchises is going to be roster flexibility with payroll. Because like you said, the Giants are going to have flexibility coming off this remarkable year, no matter how it ends in the postseason. It's an unbelievable year with the 105 plus wins. The Dodgers are going to have some pieces, by the way, that are free agents, but the Dodgers never have payroll constraints. I mean, they're the only team that's over the luxury tax threshold right now. The Padres are in a very unfavorable spot heading into the offseason because they've got $142 million tied up. Now, could they shed some of that? That's debatable, and we'll talk about it throughout the offseason. But with that much salary already tied up and with veteran pieces in place that aren't moving, the Snells and the Darvishes, and it's a good thing to have a Joe Musgrove, but, you know, the Machados, I mean, the Hosmers and the Myers. Now, could you move someone in that equation? Yeah, that's a possibility. But I think the lack of flexibility with payroll puts the Padres third on that list. The other thing where I think the Padres today are third on that list, we talked about this yesterday on our Wrap-Up Show YouTube channel, is that this franchise from top to bottom, I don't think is where the Dodgers or the Giants are. From a front office perspective, the general manager, the farm systems, the Padres farm system has really fallen back. We saw the lack of player development in 2021. So I'm with you. I think a lightning in a bottle, I think the core is there that if they stay healthy, have a new manager, put things together. Remember, for 4 months, it was a good team. For 2 months, it was an awful team. Yeah. If they could take 4 months of good baseball and make it 6 months, they could absolutely be a playoff team. Now, are they going to make up the 25 or 30 games? I don't know the answer to that, but I do think they could be a playoff team next year.
Right. I think they can be a playoff team next year. They have the nucleus there of the right talent. But what we have heard from Peter Seidler is he wants consistent winning, not just 1 year lightning in a bottle type of thing. He wants a sustained decade of success. And if we're looking at how far the Padres are away from the Giants and Dodgers, having that, 5 to 8 year window where they're competing for a National League West championship and a World Series title, that's when it gets really tough to say, like, really how far away they are. It's because I think they're really far away from that.
Yeah, I mean that's a very fair point. And the truth is, in the history of the sport, Jim, teams don't often make up what you're asking the Padres to make up in one offseason. Now it does happen. You could go back and look at some of these previous World Series champions. I think Washington in 2019 when they won it, the year before they were 82 and 80. 2 years before the Cubs won it, they were 73 and 89. We know this. We know that this can happen. It's just this division is unlike the Nats division in the NL East. It's unlike the NL Central. Like trying to get through these divisions or this division with teams like the Dodgers and the Giants could prove problematic. Now, Fernando Tatis Jr. was asked about this Friday before the Giants series. He was asked specifically about the Padres moving forward. So let's play that sound and that video. Tatis asked if the Padres have the right group or if changes need to be made.
I feel like that's AJ work, but everybody know what type of group we had at the beginning and how injuries affect us, and it's very clear what happened. And we just gotta hold ourselves accountable. Injuries are part of this game, but we just gotta find how to be a little bit more deep team.
So Tatis says it has to do more with injuries than anything else, and that's fair. I think that assessment at least is fair, but there is no guarantee. Like he even said there, and he's been hurt as well. He wants to play 162, but there's no assurance, Jim, heading into 2022. You'll have better luck when it comes to injuries.
Right. To rely on not getting injured, that's just not a good strategy to have in any sport. Like injuries happen in every sport. You have to be prepared for when you have those injuries. And the Padres this year were not prepared for those injuries at all. Giants have had a bunch of injuries. The Dodgers have had a bunch of injuries, and they've both won over 100 games. Like, this is not an outlier here where the Padres just got decimated by injuries and everyone else was like semi-healthy for the entire year. Every team has this issue. It's not just the Padres. And that's why using injuries as an excuse is just not good enough for me. It's just not. Other teams persevered. Other teams overcame injuries. Why couldn't the Padres? If a pitcher goes down, have a backup plan. At least be ready for it. And it just seemed like the backup plan for this team this year was, we'll get someone off the scrap heap. And that was Jake Arrieta and Vince Velasquez. That didn't work at all.
Yeah.
And so
Jake,
sorry, go.
No, I was going to say, Jake Arrieta posted the highest ERA of a Padre starter ever. That made 4 starts in a season. I mean, that's how bad it was.
Right. And so if you're not prepared for every single scenario, which, look, maybe they probably were. That's their job. They got to be ready for it. But it just didn't seem like they were prepared for it. It just seemed like, what do we do now? Like they put so much faith and they relied so much on the health of Yu Darvish, who has injury history, Blake Snell, who this year was average, and apparently he was dealing with like a groin injury for the entire season. You're dealing with Dinelson Lamet, who knows what's wrong with him. He's not the same pitcher. That's fool's gold to rely on him. You're relying on, at the beginning of the year, Adrian Morejon to stay healthy. Well, he has injury past. Who else? Chris Paddock. He's had 2 really bad years, and now he has a problem with his elbow. There was nobody in the farm to bring up. And then you're relying on a rookie 21-year-old Ryan Weathers. I mean, come on. You need to have more options than that. I know they had a lot of pitching options to start the year, but if you go back and look at those pitching options, a lot of them were like like very risky options to rely on for a full season.
They're going to need even more than what they brought in a year ago. I mean, I thought at the time, I thought they brought in a lot. It turns out it wasn't a lot for going from 60 to 162. But in 1 week, Darvish, Snell, Musgrove, you're like, that's a lot. I know that they've been hampered by Clevenger and Lamet, but you're thinking, shoot, you're adding 3 for 2. But you didn't realize, or in my seat at the time, you forget from 60 to 162 is a different beast. And they had no depth in the system, where a lot of teams like St. Louis has had a ton of starting pitching injuries. They've been able to overcome it. The Dodgers have had starting pitching injuries this year. The Giants, all of the teams have had starting pitching injuries and have overcome it. And I think next year you just need to have more depth when it comes to starting pitching in your system. I mean, you don't have to have 10 guys that are available day one at the big league level. You have to have it in your system. And the other thing is when you start talking about health, and Fernando Tatis Jr. talked about this today, you're going to need to see Tatis for close to, that 150 type season. That's what worries me. He said today he was leaning towards, it was not definitive, it was not settled. He was leaning towards not having the shoulder surgery, which I understand from the player's perspective. He's 22 and he's been brilliant even with the shoulder injury. With that being said, let's say next year they do stay healthy, put together a full 6 months, not 4 months, and all of a sudden it's October 1st, right? And you got a good baseball team, and maybe you're 5 games out of a division, but you've locked up the first wild card, and he goes down with a shoulder injury. And you're going to look back on that if it's 10-1 or 9-1, September 1st or October 1st, and say, well, that was preventable because they could have cleaned up that specific injury. I know injuries are not predictable. It's not like if they clean up his shoulder, that guarantees he won't have an oblique injury or a back injury or a knee injury. But if there is any shoulder-related injury in the near term, 2022, 2023, we're going to say, if he didn't have the surgery, well, that was preventable. And I just think it puts them in a tough spot. If you want to talk about injuries and staying healthy and getting lucky, I don't know if you want to head into 2022 where you're just kind of holding your breath and crossing your fingers because you've got this MVP who can miss time, though, because he's got a bulky shoulder.
Right. And the question, how far away are the Padres from the Dodgers and Giants? And the more you talk about it and the more you lay out all the scenarios and all the what ifs and all the concerns, it's like they're really far away. It does not feel like they are close to contending. I know it felt like that in the offseason, but again, that was a lot of fool's gold and that was a lot of false hope. And that was a lot of, we all got excited because these were a lot of splashy moves made by Preller. But the Dodgers coming off a 60-game World Series and the firepower that they have, and the Giants coming out of nowhere and showing that they're a stable organization with a really good front office, a really good developmental department, a really good coaching staff, a really good manager that has evolved and learned from his mistakes in Philadelphia. I just don't see that progression with the Padres. And that's something that like doesn't happen overnight. I know it seemingly looked like it happened overnight with the Giants, but everything was being like the groundwork with the Giants was being laid in place starting when Farhan got to San Francisco. You could see it. You could see the moves he was making. Like you bring in guy like Mike Yastrzemski. That's a perfect example. When Farhan first got the job in San Francisco, you brought in a guy like Mike Yastrzemski, a total nobody, and your developmental department turned him into a really good baseball player. Like you don't see that happen with the Padres where they take a guy off the scrap heap and all of a sudden he turns into like a pivotal like a vital player for your team. This doesn't happen. And that's why it's hard to say that they're close to the Dodgers and Giants because of those reasons. I just don't, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot.
Well, not just that, I think it's a great point, but also in-game strategy. Like San Francisco is the only team in the big leagues right now with 7 position players on their bench. They'll pinch hit in a third inning where the Padres wouldn't even consider it. The Dodgers obviously have out-strategized the Padres as recently as these final couple of weeks of the season and couple of months, the 16-inning game and what we saw play out at Dodger Stadium this past week as well. So you're going to need the Dodgers and the Giants to take steps back. That's asking for a lot. And you're going to need the Padres to take a step forward, which is also arguably asking for a lot. So what do you think? Leave your comments down below. How far away are the Padres? How far away are the Padres from the Dodgers and the Giants? Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to the Wrap-Up Show The reason to do it is year-round Padres content, which means on Black Monday, we'll be back for you. Will there be changes with the Padres coaching staff on Monday? We will let you know. Again, subscribe to the Wrap-Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell. Like our shows as well. And again, we'll be back on Black Monday. Will there be massive changes with the Padres on Monday? We'll find out soon enough.